It was 6:42 p.m. when Mason, my smug son-in-law, raised his wine glass and chuckled. "So, Evelyn, how's it feel to be a useless retiree?" The entire table erupted in laughter, except for me. I locked eyes with him, smiled gently, and replied, "How does it feel, knowing this useless retiree won't be funding your lifestyle anymore?" Dead silence. Mason's face dropped faster than his stock investments last year. His fork froze mid-air. Charlotte, my daughter, and his wife looked like she'd swallowed a lemon whole. Even little Lily stopped chewing her mashed potatoes. For 12 long years, I'd quietly been the financial backbone of their glossy suburban dream. Their oversized house, luxury SUV private school, ski trips and therapy bills. And not once did Mason hesitate to remind me how outdated I was. But tonight, he made the mistake of saying it out loud. In front of the kids, in front of me. The wine turned bitter, the roast went cold, and the table turned into a courtroom with every stare asking one question: what now? Mason tried to laugh it off, but his chuckle came out thin, brittle. "Come on, Evelyn. That was just a joke." I calmly placed my napkin on the table, folded neatly in thirds. "And this is just a reality check." Charlotte's eyes darted from me to Mason, unsure whose side to take. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass, the same crystal set I gifted them on their 5th anniversary. "I think we should move on," she whispered. But Mason wasn't ready to let it go. The wine had given him courage, foolish, expensive courage. He leaned back in his chair. My chair, the one at the head of the table he had slowly claimed over the years, and grinned smugly. "Look, no offense, but this is a new era. Things move fast now. Tech investments, AI, you wouldn't understand. You're from the checkbook and coupons generation." He actually used air quotes when he said it. Layla, my 10-year-old granddaughter, looked confused. My grandson Max, only 8, kept his head down, nervously poking at his food. I pushed my plate slightly away. The pot roast cooked with rosemary from my own backyard had gone cold. "And what era do you think paid for this table you're sitting at?" "The mortgage on this house, that private Montessori school your children attend." Mason blinked. Charlotte opened her mouth to speak, but I raised a hand, just one quiet motion, and she stopped. I stood up, slowly walked to the sideboard and pulled out a small black folder. I had prepared it months ago, after one too many passive-aggressive digs and eye rolls. A folder marked Records. Support 2013-2025. I laid it on the table. Mason stared at it like it might explode. "I was a nurse for 33 years, I said. I saved lives. I budgeted, planned, invested carefully. When David passed, I promised him I'd take care of Charlotte until she found her footing again. That promise was supposed to last a year or 2. It's been 12. Charlotte's voice cracked. "Mom, we didn't ask you to." "You didn't have to ask," I said, cutting her off, not unkindly. "You just started expecting." Mason snorted. "So what you want, a parade? A thank you plaque on the wall?" "No," I replied, "just respect." He opened the folder. His eyes scanned page after page of itemized payments, mortgage transfers, tuition checks, medical bills, car notes. His jaw tightened as the numbers piled up each month, each year, until he got to the total. 846,300. He went pale. "Holy." Language, I said, motioning to the kids. Charlotte looked like she might faint. "You said I don't contribute, that I sit around all day. But this," I pointed at the numbers. "This is what I've been doing. Quietly, without drama, while you built your image of success on my dime." Mason slammed the folder shut. This is extortion. No, I said calmly. This is liberation. I reached into my bag and pulled out another envelope. Starting tomorrow, I'm cancelling every automatic payment linked to your lifestyle. Your mortgage, the kids' tuition, the car insurance, the credit card backups, all of it. Charlotte's hands flew to her mouth. You can't just do that, Mason hissed. I can. I already did. The silence that followed felt like it had weight. The kids knew something had shifted, something grown up and scary. Layla clung to Charlotte's arm. Max leaned toward me. Grandma, are we in trouble? No, sweetheart, I said, kneeling next to him. But it's time your parents learn what real adulthood looks like. By Monday morning, their world had already started unraveling. At 9:07 a.m., Charlotte called me from her office bathroom voice, barely above a whisper. Mom, the mortgage company called. They said the automatic payment bounced. We're 3 days late. I know, I replied. They called because the payment came from my account. But not anymore. There was a pause, dead air, until I heard the distinct sound of her stifling a sob. But Mason said he'd take care of it if anything happened. And did he? I asked gently. No. He said it was probably just a glitch. He's at work right now, yelling at the finance department. I could picture it Mason in his glass-walled office, barking into his phone, trying to make sense of a reality he'd never prepared for. Because it had always just been handled. By noon, the private school had emailed both of them. Layla and Max's tuition payments hadn't gone through. A $35 late fee had been added, and if payment wasn't received by Friday, their enrollment would be suspended. Charlotte texted me a screenshot of the message, then called again this time, not whispering. Mom, this is serious. I know it is. Do you understand what happens if they get kicked out? Yes, I said. They'll go to public school. Like you did. She was silent. I'm not trying to punish the kids, I added. But I won't keep propping up an illusion. If you and Mason can't afford this lifestyle, maybe it's time to change the lifestyle. Tuesday brought the next blow. Their black luxury SUV, the one Mason insisted was a necessary business expense, was due for its lease renewal. With the payment history compromised and their credit already stretched thin, the dealership declined to renew without a $2,500 cash deposit. Mason called me that afternoon, his voice stiff and formal, like a business voicemail. Evelyn, I don't think you understand what you've done. These disruptions, this sabotage isn't just hurting us. It's hurting your grandchildren. No, Mason, I replied. It's revealing the truth that everything you've been showing off wasn't yours to begin with. This is financial abandonment. I laughed. Not mockingly, but with the bitter understanding of someone who'd heard enough manipulation to recognize the patterns. You abandoned your financial responsibility the moment you decided to rely on my help without gratitude or restraint. He hung up without another word. That evening I drove by their neighborhood just after sunset. The house looked different, darker. I noticed the porch light wasn't on. A subtle thing, but telling. Maybe the electricity bill hadn't been paid either. From across the street, I watched Charlotte, standing at the kitchen window, her hand pressed against the glass. She wasn't crying. She looked frozen. Like a child who had wandered too far into a forest and realized she was lost. By Thursday, the school called me directly. Mrs. Green, the woman on the phone, asked politely. We wanted to confirm the status of Layla and Max's tuition. Their parents said you typically handle payments. Not anymore, I said calmly. I'll be setting up direct payment for the children's schooling from now on. There was a pause. So, the tuition will be covered. Yes, but through me directly. Not through their parents. Please update your records. The woman was kind, professional. Understood, Mom. We'll send the new authorization forms to your address. Later that night, Layla called me from Charlotte's cell phone. Grandma, why is Mommy so sad she says we might move? Sweetheart, I said gently. Sometimes adults have to make changes when the way they've been living doesn't work anymore. But no matter what, you'll be okay. You know why? Why? Because you're strong. And because I'm still here, she sniffled. Promise, I promise. By Saturday, I received word from my bank that Charlotte had attempted to reauthorize the old automatic mortgage payment. I called her immediately. Don't do that again, I said. I thought maybe you'd changed your mind. I haven't. I will always care about you, but I won't enable you. That's the line now. There was no argument. Just a quiet, heartbroken, okay. That weekend, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea and my old file folders spread out again. Not to calculate, but to confirm. To affirm that this wasn't spite, it was boundaries. Healthy, overdue boundaries. 846 hours, $300. That's not a number, it's a whole life. One I'd pressed pause on for 12 years to help someone else play pretend. And now it was their turn to face the numbers. By the second week, the desperation was no longer hiding behind pride. Charlotte showed up at my front door alone on Tuesday evening without makeup, in old jeans and a faded t-shirt that didn't belong to her usual suburban princess aesthetic. Her eyes were puffy. Not from a single bad night of sleep, but from many. Can I come in? She asked softly. I nodded and stepped aside. She sank into my living room couch, like it was the first time she'd sat all day. We sold Mason's Rolex, she said. Got $100. Not nearly enough. I didn't say anything. She didn't need comfort. She needed clarity. We tried applying for emergency deferments on the mortgage and utilities. But with our income and the missed payments, we're flagged. And Mason, I asked, he's furious. At the world. At you. But mostly at himself. He's sleeping in the guest room. We barely speak. I walked to the kitchen, poured her a glass of water, and set it on the table beside her. She stared at it like it held answers. I've been thinking a lot, she said. About what you said. About expectations. Entitlement. Gratitude. She rubbed her hands together nervously. I didn't mean to become that person. The one who just expects, assumes, takes. It wasn't always like that. No, I said. It wasn't. I remember calling you after Jake was born, sobbing about how scared I was. About the mortgage, the hospital bills, Mason's unstable job. And you said, don't worry, sweetheart. We'll get you through this. You said we. Not me. Not you. We. I smiled faintly. I meant it. She looked up. You always meant it. And I took that for granted. There was a pause. I think I stopped seeing you as a person, she admitted. You became this silent helper in the background, like a financial safety net with no feelings. But I know now. I know what it costs. Not just the money, but the dignity. I let that truth sit. And the kids, I asked. They're confused, scared mostly. Layla misses piano lessons. Max asked why we don't order takeout anymore. I told them we're learning about budgeting, and this surprised me they understood. Better than Mason does. I raised an eyebrow. He's still stuck on the humiliation, she added. He says we'll bounce back. Get a loan, refinance, do whatever it takes. But I don't think he really understands what rock bottom feels like yet. I sat down beside her. And you? I've been waking up at 5:30 every morning to apply for jobs. Any jobs. Grocery store cashier, receptionist, daycare assistant, even a warehouse shipping job. Did anyone call back? She nodded. A small bakery, $14 an hour, part-time. I start next Monday. That was the moment I saw it, the spark. Not of entitlement, not of manipulation, but of responsibility, of someone slowly reclaiming her own life. I want to be someone the kids look up to, she whispered. Not someone who hides behind your generosity. You still can be, I said. The next morning I got a call from the school principal. Apparently, Mason had shown up in person to try and explain things. He told the school administrator that their payment disruption was a temporary issue caused by his mother-in-law's sudden refusal to continue her legacy contributions. Legacy contributions. The phrase made me laugh out loud. He seemed frazzled, the principal said delicately, and frustrated. He didn't take it well when we informed him that Mrs. Green, you had already arranged direct payment for the remainder of the semester. Thank you for letting me know, I replied. It was clear now Charlotte was evolving. Mason was unraveling. Later that day, I received an email from a longtime neighbor, Janet, who volunteered at the same library where Charlotte used to attend book clubs. Hi, Evelyn, it read. Heard some wild things from Charlotte last year about how she and Mason had built everything on their own grit. I believed it then. I don't anymore. People are starting to talk, and not in their favor. It was beginning the quiet reckoning. Reputation, like credit, only stretches so far before it snaps. By Friday, Mason showed up at my house unannounced. He stood on the porch in a wrinkled dress shirt and untied shoes, looking more like a frat boy after a bad job interview than the self-proclaimed corporate powerhouse he fancied himself to be. Can we talk? He asked. I didn't move. Are you here to blame me again? No, he said. I'm here because I can't sleep. I opened the door and let him in. He sat down heavily, so on the armchair across from mine. You were right. I didn't earn any of it. Not really. The house, the lifestyle, the image. It was built on your money and your silence. And when you pulled the plug, it collapsed like a sandcastle. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. I thought being a provider meant showing off. Driving the nice car, posting vacation pictures, sending the kids to schools that made me look successful. But I was just faking it. He looked up at me hollow-eyed. I want to change. I don't know how yet, but I want to start. This time I didn't lecture. I didn't pull out receipts or recount the years. I just asked, are you willing to say that out loud? In front of Charlotte? In front of the people you lied to? His throat moved in a hard swallow. I think I have to, he said. Sunday afternoon arrived with quiet anticipation. At precisely 2:55 p.m., Charlotte's silver sedan pulled into my driveway, followed closely by Mason in a borrowed dented Honda. Gone was the sleek German SUV he once proudly parked with precision like a showroom model. This car coughed smoke as it shut off. Layla and Max tumbled out of the back seat, both dressed in their school uniforms despite it being the weekend. Probably Charlotte's way of signaling something respect, humility, preparation. They rang the bell together. I opened the door before the second chime. Come in, I said. My tone was neutral. I wasn't here for a dramatic reunion. I was here for clarity. We gathered in the living room. Charlotte took the seat near the fireplace. Mason stood for a moment before sitting stiffly on the edge of the couch as if ready to bolt. I understand you're here with something to say. I said, folding my hands on my lap. Mason inhaled deeply. Evelyn, I owe you a public apology. He stood up, pulling a folded sheet of paper from his pocket. Charlotte looked surprised. It was clear she hadn't seen it before. I wrote this last night, he said, and I plan to post it publicly as well. But I want to read it here first. He cleared his throat and began. For 12 years, I let pride and ego cloud my gratitude. I accepted help without acknowledgement. I built a life I couldn't afford and let others believe I had done it all on my own. I disrespected the very person who made it possible, my wife's mother, Evelyn Green. I publicly minimized your contributions and privately depended on them. You didn't just give us money. You gave us stability, opportunity, dignity. And we abused that gift. I am sorry. Starting today, I intend to live differently, not just for my children, but for myself. Not out of shame, but out of honor. He folded the paper and sat back down. Charlotte's eyes welled with tears, and even the children looked stunned. I said nothing for a long moment. Then I turned to Charlotte. Do you have something to add? She nodded. Mum, I've already started writing my part. A letter to the local newspaper. I'll post on Facebook too. I'll correct every lie we let linger. I nodded. Good. Because truth matters. I stood and walked to my desk, where a new set of folders sat ready. One for each child. These, I said, are Layla and Max's education plans. Tuition will be paid directly to their school every quarter. I've also set up 2 college savings accounts, one for each of them. Contributions will begin this month. Charlotte gasped. You're still helping? I raised my hand gently. Let me be clear. I am helping them. Not you, not Mason. I looked directly at them both. There will be no more mortgage payments from me. No car payments. No vacation loans. No emergency transfers. You will live on what you earn. They nodded in unison. And the children's expenses, I continued, will be managed directly. School doctor visits, clothing, sports, music, and future college costs. But the accounts are in my name. I retain control. This is for their stability, not for your convenience. Understood, Mason said quickly. Completely. I looked at the kids. Layla, Max, I said. You will never have to worry about being pulled out of school or going without medicine or shoes. Grandma will make sure of that. But it's time for your parents to learn how to stand on their own 2 feet. They both nodded solemnly, as if they understood more than I gave them credit for. Charlotte spoke softly. We've already started looking for a smaller home, something with a modest rent closer to the kids' school. We'll sell the house, settle the debt, and reset our lives. We've made peace with it. That's a smart move, I said. And we'll attend family dinners here, she added, every month. Not for money talks, for relationships. Mason hesitated before adding, we also started seeing a counselor. Just trying to rebuild the right way. I walked to the bookshelf, pulled out a small photo album, and handed it to Layla. Inside were pictures of Charlotte as a child riding a bike, hugging her father, winning a spelling bee. Layla flipped through it with fascination, then passed it to Max, who pointed at a picture and asked, Is that really Mom in overalls? Everyone laughed, a soft, honest laugh that hadn't happened in a long while. Your mother was brave, I told them. She still is. That afternoon, as they left, Mason turned to me at the doorway. Thank you, he said. Not just for the help, but for the wake-up call. It hurt, but it was necessary. I nodded. Good. Then don't waste it. 3 months later, everything about Mason and Charlotte looked different. Their new home, a modest two-bedroom duplex on Maple Street, sat nestled between retired couples and young families, just starting out. It didn't have the vaulted ceilings, granite countertops, or three-car garage their old house boasted. But it had something more important: peace. I arrived for our monthly family dinner and saw Mason mowing the small front yard with an old push mower sweat on his brow and grass stains on his shoes. He looked up, smiled sheepishly, and waved like a neighbor instead of a man trying to impress someone. Inside, Charlotte greeted me in a simple apron flower dusting her jeans. "I made lasagna from scratch," she said. "The recipe you used to make on Sundays." I smiled. "Smells better than mine ever did." The dining table was small, a second-hand find from a church sale. The plates didn't match. The glasses were old plastic tumblers. But the laughter, the warmth, that was real. After dinner, Layla played a piece on the keyboard, one Mason had fixed up from a garage sale. Max proudly showed me his latest science project, made from cardboard and string. "We made it as a team," he said. "Dad helped with the design. Mom did the glue gun part. I did everything else." I looked over at Mason and Charlotte. They beamed, not with arrogance, but with pride earned through effort. Later that night, Charlotte and I sat alone on the porch, while Mason put the kids to bed. "Everything's slower here," she said. "No HOA notices. No pressure to host perfect parties. No pretending. And how does that feel?" She looked up at the stars. "Freeing. I thought I'd hate it. I thought I'd feel small. But I don't. I feel right-sized." She turned toward me. "I've started saving. Just small amounts. We have $200 in emergency savings. First time ever." "That's wonderful, honey. And we're building a budget together every month. Mason's even learning to cook. Chicken stir-fry is his specialty." I laughed. "That I have to see." Her face grew serious for a moment. "I used to think respect came from what you owned. But now I see it comes from what you manage. From how you treat people. From how you show up." I nodded. "You've come a long way." "Mason too," she said. "He doesn't drink wine every night anymore. He doesn't talk about being the boss or needing people to admire him. He picks up the kids from school. He checks in with his team at work without yelling. He apologizes now." Just then, Mason stepped onto the porch with 2 mugs of tea. He handed one to me and one to Charlotte. "It's that ginger chamomile blend you like," he said. "Got it from the farmer's market." I took a sip. "Perfect." He sat down beside Charlotte. His body language relaxed, not the tight coil of ego, but the ease of someone comfortable in his own skin. "Work's different now," he said. "I stopped aiming for titles. Started focusing on mentoring my team. Last week, one of the interns said I reminded him of his dad. I didn't know if that was good or bad. It's good, I said. If he said it with respect, it's very good." He nodded. "I want to be someone my kids admire. Not for what I bought, but for what I taught." Charlotte leaned into his shoulder. "He's also applying to finish his degree online." I raised an eyebrow. "You never finished." "Dropped out senior year when Charlotte got pregnant," he said. "Told myself I didn't need it. But now I want it. Not for the job, just for me." For the first time in years, I didn't see the boy trying to impress or manipulate. I saw the man he could have been all along, the one David would have respected. Max peeked out the door. "Grandma want to play Uno before bedtime." "Of course, sweetheart. We all gathered around the coffee table with a mismatched deck of cards and chipped coasters. The children giggled. Mason laughed louder than anyone when Charlotte drew 4 cards in a row. As the game ended and I kissed the kids goodnight, Mason walked me to my car. "Thank you," he said, "for drawing a line, for not backing down, for loving us enough to let us fall." I looked at him carefully. "Thank me by staying on this path, by showing my grandchildren what real integrity looks like." "I will," he said, voice steady. "You'll see." As I drove home, I didn't think about the $846 or $300 anymore. That was never really the cost. The true debt had been emotional years of silent resentment, invisible labor, unacknowledged sacrifice. Now slowly, with each lasagna made from scratch, each bedtime story, read each budget meeting held, they were repaying something far more important than money. They were rebuilding trust. 4 months after that dinner where everything came crashing down, I sat in my backyard garden, pruning roses under the golden light of late summer. The birds chirped as if nothing had ever gone wrong in the world, and for once I let myself believe they were right. My phone buzzed. A message from Charlotte. "We just got approved for a modest home loan. Small fixer-upper 3-bed 2-bath. Closing next spring. Max picked out paint colors already." I smiled. The woman who once cried over granite countertops now celebrated a cracked driveway and a leaky faucet. And somehow, that felt like progress. The following weekend, we gathered again for our monthly family dinner, now a ritual filled with actual love instead of obligatory small talk. The kids helped set the table while Mason stirred chili on the stove. It wasn't a gourmet feast, but it was full of warmth. As we ate, Max told me about his new after-school robotics club. "Grandma, I'm gonna build a robot that can clean the garage. Make one for my attic too, please," I said, and he giggled with pride. Layla shared her latest piano piece, an original composition she named "Thank You." When she finished, she turned to me and said, "I wrote it for you." Charlotte wiped away tears, and even Mason seemed choked up. After dessert, the kids ran off to play, and Charlotte reached across the table to hold my hand. "Mom," she said, "I know we said it before, but thank you for not just supporting us, but for stopping, for drawing a line." Mason nodded. "You gave us more by saying no than all the yeses you ever said." I squeezed her hand. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people learn. They told me about their weekly budget meetings, their small emergency fund now reaching $2,500. Mason had passed 2 online college courses. Charlotte was training new employees at the bakery and had been offered a full-time supervisor position. But more importantly, they were whole. No longer leaning on me. No longer hiding behind the illusion of success. I stood up and walked to the kitchen, where I kept a framed photo of David. Charlotte followed me quietly. "Do you think Dad would be proud of us now?" she asked. I took a deep breath. "He would be proud that you've become self-reliant, that you're raising your children with humility and honesty, that you're living with purpose instead of performance." She nodded. "I hope I make him proud every day. You are sweetheart." That night, as I sat by the fireplace, sipping tea and watching the flames flicker, I reflected on the road that brought us here. 12 years, nearly $1 million. Countless quiet sacrifices, but what mattered most, the shift, the transformation, the growth. I hadn't set out to punish them. I set out to reclaim my dignity. And in doing so, I'd given them a far greater inheritance than money, the lesson of becoming whole on their own. They now lived with less but laughed more. They struggled, but with purpose. They had fewer things but deeper gratitude. Max still played in his soccer league because I paid the school directly. Layla still took music lessons. I continued to fund what mattered: education, health, growth, not lifestyle illusions. And I had my life back too. I started painting again, joined a local book club, took weekend trips with friends I'd neglected. I planned a riverboat tour through Europe for the following spring, something David and I once dreamed of doing together. My retirement finally felt like mine. Not a burden, not a bank account for someone else. Mine. The story didn't end with foreclosure or estrangement. It ended with understanding. It ended with evolution. Charlotte and Mason stopped being dependent adults and became responsible parents. Layla and Max saw their parents transform and in turn learned that love isn't about taking. It's about showing up, working hard, and being grateful. The family dinners weren't funded by guilt anymore. They were fueled by respect. And me, I was no longer a background character in someone else's narrative. I was Evelyn Green, a retired nurse, a grandmother, a woman who once gave too much, then learned to give wisely. And in the quiet glow of that Sunday evening, I finally felt what I hadn't felt in a long, long time: peace. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't giving more, it's knowing when to stop. Evelyn spent 12 years supporting her daughter and son-in-law, not out of obligation, but out of compassion. Yet that kindness slowly turned into silent suffering. What began as love evolved into dependence, and what was once appreciated became expected. True generosity is rooted in respect, not just for others, but for ourselves. We often believe that helping our family means shielding them from discomfort, from failure, from responsibility. But shielding too long creates weakness, not strength. Evelyn didn't cut her family off to punish them. She drew a line to protect her dignity and remind them of their own potential. And in doing so, she gave them something far more powerful than money: a mirror to see themselves clearly. When we choose boundaries over burnout, accountability over enabling, we teach those we love how to stand tall on their own. And we finally stand tall ourselves. If you're a parent, grandparent, or caregiver who's been silently sacrificing for years, this is your permission to pause. Helping isn't about saying yes forever. It's about offering support that leads to growth, not dependence. Ask yourself, am I being appreciated or simply expected? Are my efforts creating strength or avoiding conflict? It's okay to stop funding someone's lifestyle if it's costing your peace. It's okay to say no more and mean it. Because the best legacy you can leave isn't financial. It's emotional resilience, self-respect, and the wisdom to choose love with boundaries.